That was the Russian Eastern Overture by Nicholas Rimsky-Korsakov, and it was a piece that's credited as one of those Russian national pieces. It combines Russian Eastern Orthodox Church chants with a European beautiful colored orchestration, very programmatic music with the sunrise, the violin solo, the dawn. We're now going to go to one of the great classical pieces ever written, Haydn's Oxford Symphony, Symphony No. 2. This was a piece that was very much a product of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a time when people from like nobles and common folk or merchants and philosophers would all get together as Freemasons to talk about ideas. You know, George Washington, for instance, and Benjamin Franklin were Freemasons. So were Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. They were also Freemasons. And they were all involved in a lot of these philosophies and ideas. The notion, it was called the Age of Reason, the idea that if we just apply science to things, we can solve a lot of the world's problems. We can apply science to culture, we can apply science to science, we can apply science to government. And certainly, I guess the greatest, creation of the Enlightenment was probably the United States Constitution, which was very much a product of this idea that you could create a system where opposing forces or factions could all work together for a common good. And this is, in music, the great Enlightenment invention is this beast behind me here, the orchestra. Because this also is a group of opposing factions that somehow have to work things out together to create music. In fact, the idea that the brass instruments, which can play exponentially louder than, let's say, than strings or woodwinds, that they can even belong together and get along peacefully and work somewhat peacefully and work things out is part of that idea. It wasn't only the orchestra, but just the system of the way a symphony is put together, the way Haydn worked out the symphony in a structure we call sonata form, that came to dominate all of classical music up until World War I. Right up until World War I, it was the dominant form. And the system itself was the idea that you have two ideas that are opposing and come into great conflict and have to work that conflict out. In a symphony, it might be two different harmonies, often two different harmonic areas, one in conflict with the other, or two different themes, or many more themes, or with a masterpiece like the Haydn Symphony, something much deeper, which is musical ideas. You'll notice in this Haydn Symphony things that disrupt the fabric of the piece. Right in the introduction that begins the piece, the cellos play a note that's completely out of the scale, E flat. And from that moment, in a sense, everything goes downhill. If you listen, although the piece sounds so beautiful and polished, if you listen very carefully, you'll notice it's continually falling apart. The meter is fighting with itself. Sometimes you can't even tell where the downbeat is. By the minuet, you're pretty much lost. And then there's places in each movement where the music, if you listen carefully, it suddenly stops. In other words, this disruptive element is so powerful, it actually tears a hole in the fabric of the music, and then it rebuilds it again. And that's what's so optimistic and wonderful. It rebuilds and becomes a whole again. It's something that's kind of wonderful. And I only found out by accident that this piece was written in 1790. I remember in 1790, the very same year that George Washington was inaugurated as our first president, trying to prove that the U.S. Constitution was something that was going to also be a fabric that could hold together. So I'm very proud of the orchestra of this work. We would like to play all four movements without pause, Haydn's Symphony No. 92, the Oxford.
Thank you.